Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 457 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week. Kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. Good morning. Catching up on a lot of spoilers, actually.
Yes, we have a huge chunk of Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and this set is absurd, and I'm super hyped to talk about it, and that's going to be one of our big topics today, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. We got another co-host in Krim. Good morning, Krim. How are you today?
Morning. I'm awake.
That's good. That's good. Would be hard to podcast while sleeping, I think. I haven't cracked that one yet. That would be the ultimate, though. Can you imagine how much content you could get done if you could make it while you were sleeping?
Yeah. We just did a sleep stream.
Yo, sleep streams are wild, dude. Like, having a mod help you with that. Also, on top of that, I had like the wildest weekend story.
Ooh, what happened in the Krim weekend? I'm curious.
Okay, so I go out to a local One Piece TCG tournament, right? Mm-hmm. And so I shuffle my deck up. You know, I deal out my hand. I get all of this stuff, and then there's a life deck, right, where that you normally draw stuff. You draw from when someone hits you, and so my opponent hits me, and I reveal a farewell off the top of my life pile.
Wait,
and
literally farewell, like the magic card?
Like the magic card. So I realized,
cute? What happened?
I mean, I call the judge on myself, and they're like, "Oh,
How did you do that? Your cards are sleeved, right? Did you have the same sleeves? How did a farewell end up in your One Piece deck?
They are in the same sleeves as one of my commander decks, and I guess at some point it got into my deck. So you have a deck cap of 50 cards. I had 51 cards, and I guess the 51st card was from just a different card game, and so that
Did you get thrown out for cheating? Tell us the OP rules for One Piece. Did you get a game loss? Did your tournament end right there?
No. They allowed me to get back into it because they allowed me with that power of anime and friendship. They also just told me, take that card, obviously, de-sleeve it, get it out of here, and take a random card from your deck and then just put it on top. Because it is equivalent to like an F&M, right? It's not even like it's like a big tournament. So like, I think if this were like Comp REL, yeah, definitely I'd be DQ'd.
They didn't let you resolve it though and wrath your opponent's One Piece cards away? No.
God,
okay.
No, I wish.
Oh, the Krim life. Oh, that's actually a hilarious story. What are the odds? I've heard of people having, I forgot to de-sideboard or something. I don't know if I've ever heard of someone having a card from the wrong game in their deck, though. That is
the new One Piece secret lair. What are you talking
about? Anyway, outside of farewells and One Piece, our topics for today mostly going to be Lost Caverns of Ixalan spoilers. We have so many cards, mechanics, cool things to talk about. Also, want to talk a little bit about the blogatog, Mark Rosewater's blog. There's been some topics about Universes Beyond on there that I think are interesting, so I wanted to mention that and then talk a ton of spoilers. So that's the plan for today. Before we get into it, though, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. And if you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, Card Conduit lets you skip them. You can use a curated service and send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use a sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. And either way, you're going to get a detailed report with their results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thanks to Card Conduit for supporting this show. And let's talk some Magic. And let's start with what I think will be the smaller topic, and then we'll dig into the meat of the spoiler season of Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So I want to ask you all about Mark Rosewater's blog. So what got me thinking about this is, if you don't know Mark Rosewater, he's the head designer at Magic, and one of the awesome things about Mark is he is very interactive with the community. He has a blog on Tumblr, the Blogatog, which is basically just like fans asking him questions and him responding to those. So last week we talked a lot about Marvel coming to Magic, the big universes beyond thing. And this has led to a big conversation. Some people like it, some people hate it, all that stuff. But what ended up happening is someone went back through Mark Rosewater's Blogatog, going back to, I want to say 2011 was the first one, up through 2018, and found a bunch of questions where people would ask Mark, what about other IPs coming to Magic? What about other IPs? Will we ever see other IPs coming to Magic? And every answer is, no, we make our own worlds. We make our own worlds. We're not going to do this. We don't do sets based on other IPs. And this has been floating around as like some sort of gotcha to Mark Rosewater. Like, Mark, you said, you wouldn't do this and now you're doing it. Is that fair? Like, first off, is this even a fair got you? Because when I read it, I was like, well, sure, I see what you're saying. But at the same time, like, can't people change? Can't opinions change? Like, couldn't new information have been presented between 2018 and 2022 or whenever Universe Beyond started that would, like, maybe the answer is different now for reasons beyond Mark's control? Or maybe Mark doesn't get to choose and he's going to, support Wizards because that's his job. Maybe he doesn't even like Universes Beyond and he, someone else made that decision and he supports it because that's what he does as the head designer at Magic. But what do you think? Is this a fair gotcha to Mark?
No, Seth, you must lock in your opinion for
Yeah.
the rest of your life. You cannot use any new information to update anything. So, those tweets you made when you were in middle school? That's you.
Yeah.
Don't attempt to
forever.
change. Like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, this angers me. Okay, so Mark has stated multiple times, he does this as a way to like engage with community. It's not even part of his job. He actually like has to do his real job and he spends time to engage with community. And if you are going to cause trouble over him trying to help us glean insight into WotC, they're just going to nix it. This is a way to kill Blogatog, right? They'll be like, actually, I don't want to deal with like this random backlash of like random people talking about stuff, so we'll just cut it, right? So this is a good way to get Blogatog canceled if you want to keep digging this up. But, Mark is obviously very high up at WotC, right? It's his opinion, but he obviously speaks on behalf of the company, right? He's not going to come out and say something that's like outright wrong or goes against, the vision or whatever of WotC. But stuff changes. I'm sure 10 years ago, they were all like, yeah, we want to build Magic IP, right? I'm sure they're like, we don't want Marvel, really. But then here we are, right? They're like, actually, it's much easier to sell Lord of the Rings than it is to sell Magic IP. Today, he reiterated that they are focusing on their worlds still. And I truly believe that. Like, they want to make their worlds work. But if there's easy money on the side, you better believe they're taking that too. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that it's fair to try to pin comments from literally 11 years ago and say, like, hey, you guys didn't do what you stated 11 years ago. A lot of stuff has happened in the past 11 years. And I would actually be sad if they held every statement they made, set in stone like this, right? Because that means they're not changing, they're not using new information, they're basically just doing their thing. So I think this is fine. And I don't know if people are actually serious about this or they're just using like anything as a means to start complaining about Universes Beyond. But like, really, like 11 years ago, this is like, if he said this like 2 months ago, then you're like, oh, well, that's suspicious, right? But like 11 years ago, like, geez.
There was definitely one person on Reddit who was going through every thread regarding Universes Beyond and like responding to every comment with the image of all those Blogatog posts. Just like every comment was just that spam it. Did you see he said this? Did you see he said this? What do you think, Grim?
I mean, the internet, reading between the lines and understanding the nuanced subtleties of like, all these things that are said online, that couldn't be them. I don't know. I feel like the internet is very, very good at being reasonable. No, I'm kidding. Of course, this is unreasonable. Like this, just like Richard had mentioned, anything that you like that Mark tweeted like over a decade now. Was that you say 2012?
2012 up to the most recent one was 2018, I want to say. So over that span of time.
So, like,
interesting how 5 to 11 years ago is where the stuff happened. They couldn't find something from last year, which would actually support the cause, right?
But even if they found something from last year, who's to say something doesn't happen within a year's time, right? I don't know. I guess clearly the internet has also let me know that they do not like The I don't know. I view things a little differently. So obviously, I think that it is, not. It just makes no sense to me. It's not reasonable to me. I don't think the internet understands a lot of things.
Yeah. Also, WotC, Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast design team, like they're not one entity. There could be differing opinions.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, arena economy sucks. I'm sure some people in Hasbro and Wizards, maybe even Hasbro C-suite, thinks it sucks, right? But they have to come to a consensus as a company, and there must be a single opinion for them to do something, right? So it's possible that there are people in Wizards that hate Universes Beyond and think it's not the future, and then there's others that do. And over time, the power. It's like a game of Commander, right? Over time, the power shifts, and they gang up on each other, and politics and whatnot, and prevailing wisdom changes. They're like, it's fog meta now. That's Universes Beyond time, right? It changes. So
it's not.
I don't know. My conclusion is not Marl lied, right? He's saying what is the prevailing opinion at the time, or his prevailing opinion at the time. And that could be many things, right? It could be one of many opinions. It could be the opinion changed over time. It could be new information caused things to change. Market forces happen, like whatever. This is before COVID, right? Like who would have expected any of this, right? Like this was before Arena. Like who would use this information for anything, right? This is a long time ago.
And it's important to just realize what Mark does. He's like the head designer, but he also, as you said, like there's a whole bunch of people that run WotC and Hasbro, and he doesn't necessarily have control over all of those things. Like he probably has control over things within the card design process, but choosing what products, I would be surprised if that was like part of Mark Rosewater's job to like have any authority over what products they actually make. So it's important to realize that too, that like this isn't, even if his opinion is negative of Universes Beyond, which I don't think it is, because he posted something about how the Marvel playtesting like really won him over to how awesome this could be because he loves Marvel or something. So I think he likes Universes Beyond now. But it's possible that he could have that opinion and other people would overrule him. I think it's also, you can see like one thing that you see on the blog talk a lot is the storm scale. And I think this is another example of that. The storm scale is like a rating of how likely it is for a mechanic to return. And you'll see some big changes in there. Like 1 is like almost certainly going to return, and 10 is like almost certainly never going to return. And over the course of people tracking the storm scale, Infect, for example, went from like a 2, which is like almost as evergreen as possible, to a 10, where it's like almost never going to come back for sure. That's just the nature of like magic and changing and growing, right? Like, I don't think he's lying when he said Infect was a 2. Things have just changed over the course of time. I do got to ask you, though, one other question about this before spoilers. So there was a post asking about, will WotC keep designing in-universe sets, even if Universes Beyond blows up and outsells in-universe sets? And Mark's response was, there's a lot of important business reasons to keep making in-universe Magic sets. My question is, does this actually matter? Like, if we think of the blog as like a snippet in time of Mark Rosewater's opinion, do we take this to mean 5 years from now, this is 100% guaranteed they keep making in-universe sets? Or does this represent Mark's personal opinion in 2023? Like, how much weight should we put into things that Mark Rosewater says on his blog? Because as we say, things do change and people grow and evolve and the company changes. Like, how much weight do you put into a statement like that?
I believe Wizards is doing that, and you will see this in the next 1 or 2 years, but that doesn't mean their opinion changes in 2 months. I think the perfect analogy is like organized play or whatever, where every 6 months they roll out this like brand new organized play system, and they're like, look, we've solved everything and we're going to do it. And they start working towards it. But in 4 months, they're like, wait a minute, we got it wrong. We got to change it to this thing, right? So I believe currently they do believe in-world is still important and they're working on it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't change, right? If they go Lord of the Rings into Marvel into Final Fantasy and Magic grows 5x in size and makes more money than you've ever seen in your life, do I think they'll still do their in-universe world? No, right? It'll be much lower priority, right? Information can change. Market forces could dictate what happens. So Yeah, like currently they're doing this, but lots of stuff can happen to change that between now and 5 years from now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's way too much logic. Calm down, Richard. Calm down, Richard. Hold on, that
No,
makes
we will.
sense.
I'm gonna screenshot this. I'm gonna put it on
Yeah.
my wall, and
Yeah.
then every day I'm gonna comment about how Marl lied to me, and that my trust in large corporations that make card games has been shattered.
You brought up a really good point earlier. Like, I want Mero to keep doing this. He doesn't have to do it. This isn't his job. He does it for fun. And if it becomes too much of a hassle, he might stop doing it. We lose this really interesting glimpse inside the psyche of like WotC and Magic's head designer. So I would say, like, treat it for what it is. Like, this is Mark stating what's happening at a current point in time. Things change all the time. We see that with the Storm Scale. We see that with the Universes Beyond. It doesn't mean he's lying, and I'm afraid if we get too critical, we just lose this altogether. Not that you can't criticize Wizards, and there's plenty of things to criticize him about, but I don't think something Mark Rosewater said in 2011 and it not working out in 2023 is one of the things that we should actively be, picking up the pitchforks about. So just keep that in mind, that if it becomes too negative, I could see maybe Mark just drops it and stops doing it, and that would be really sad.
Yeah, there's a fine line between like critiquing something, right? Like definitely critique stuff, right? Always speak your mind within reason about stuff. So yeah, but just also don't blur that with just being like a weenie. Because don't do that either.
Anyway, any other thoughts on this, or should we move on to some Lost Caverns of Ixalan spoilers? We have so many spoiler cards. Richard, before you take us away, what's your like super quick one sentence, like how good do you think this set is? Because I gotta say, like I feel like I do this almost every set, but the set seems absurd to me. It seems like so flavorful, so powerful. But what do you guys think? Is this like an above average power level set, or no? Am I just getting too hyped like usual?
I actually had this discussion on my stream trying to rank all the power levels of current standard sets. And I also one thing we realized is I first off, I think this set is really good. I think this set is really, really good. But I also realized how much we've been like, how the whatever 3-strad, the third Innistrad, Tokyo Drift or whatever, the third one. I don't remember the name of it. But the return to Innistrad 3 times, right? That
Midnight
set is
Hunt.
super. Yeah, there you go.
Crimson Vow,
Yeah, those two.
Yeah, I don't remember the names. That
Tokyo
set,
Drift.
I guess it got. I feel like it's slept on because that set is actually like super powerful. Like I kind of just feel like in standard, we kind of forgot how powerful it is. Like Dominaria United had Leyline Binding, all this other stuff, but like I actually think that like we had this discussion about what's the most powerful set in standard right now, and I would actually think that like okay, Kamigawa is like is probably the best thing, and then it probably goes Cavern, and Cavern is like right there with like Midnight Hunt and all of or whichever one has Meat Hook.
Oh, wait, but what's actually good from that set instead? Like, Adeline's good. The lands are good. What makes...
The lands are good. We had Meat Hook. Then we also had Trespasser. You don't think about it, but there's actually a lot of, like, powerful cards in that set. They just don't... They don't, like, pop up like how, I don't know, like a Shealdred or an Oko does, right? But, like, when you look at the set overall, it's actually pretty powerful.
Interesting.
There's a lot of played
maybe
cards.
You're right.
Why does this matter? Are we just buying a box of Lost Caverns and building a standard deck?
I mean, I'm just saying,
just
in the grand scheme, if you compare everything, in the power of standard, I think that Lost Caverns looks really good. And I think, maybe right now it might be slept on because like Kamigawa is still clearly at the top. Because you have channel lands and all of that stuff, but like, I think this set's pretty good.
So you think it's a strong set, above average power level, you would say? What do you think, Richard?
Yeah.
Is it strong?
it looks strong, but like I don't even understand half the cards, so I'm not sure if I can make an informed choice. Like the mechanic, I was like, so if you don't know, Neotuk, our editor / helper, is rules master, right? So we always ask him, and we have to ask him for every card in the set. We're like, there's things where there are cards that flip to the other side. Sometimes they exile and come back. Sometimes they just flip, right? There's cards. We'll talk about one of the cards that has lots of wordy text about base power and current power and difference and counters. The mechanics even sound the same, descending and descended. And then like one of them is like kind of delirium, but not. And then like there's discover, which is like cascade, but not. So
And then
there's a lot of stuff going on, and
Yeah.
we're not even going to talk about like the amount of cards that flip into lands and how much text is going on. But from what little I understand, it looks good, and I'm sure this is going to be one of the cases where we're like, oh, this card actually works like this, and then if you do this, it's actually busted, but no one really understood that. So we'll see some hidden gems pop out, I think, too, because there's just so many new cards and the power level's high, so you have potential for role players like all the way down to common, right? So I think we'll see some good stuff.
Like
Well,
the
that's-
uncommons are like cracked. I think they're absolutely like some of these uncommons are insane.
Yeah.
I mean, did you see that Reaper Claw Raptor? That's whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, Reaper Claw Raptor deals 4 damage to that.
that card's just cracked against you, Grim.
But I think it's good in general. It's
No,
just
it is.
so
It
good.
is a decent.
Right?
It seems like at least a good sideboard card to hate on all the instant speed decks. It's what, like a 3-mana 4/3. So yeah, it's got decent stats. Yeah, the uncommons I would agree. The uncommon power level overall I think is really high in this set. But let's talk some spoilers, Richard. Why don't you guide us through some spoilers and new mechanics?
All right, you can check out all the cards at mtgpreviews.com. Let's start off with one of the face cards, Quintorius Kand. Boros, 5-mana Planeswalker, 3 red and a white, 4 starting loyalty. Quintorius is the Planeswalker. Where's Quintorius from? Like, Ixalan?
Strixhaven? I think
Strixhaven,
originally we
right?
saw him Strixhaven, yeah.
Whenever you cast, okay, this is a static because we all have to have static abilities now, right? Whenever you cast a spell from exile, Quintorius deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. +1, create a 3/2 red-white spirit creature token. -3, discover 4. -6, exile any number of target lands from your graveyard. Add red for each card exiled. You may play those cards this turn. So Discover is hilarious because we just talked about banning Cascade. So Discover is basically Cascade, except the restriction is not mana value, it's that number, so Discover 4. And then you also have the choice of not casting the spell and just drawing a card. So in case you Cascade, their example was like, oh, what if you cascaded into a combat trick or something when you didn't want it? So now you can just draw a card. But yeah, they fixed Cascade.
By making it
they
more
made
powerful, technically.
I can't believe they made it more powerful.
Isn't this card really good? So I feel like one thing I've noticed with Discover is you really see a gap in card evaluation with people who've been around a while and played with Cascade and newer players who haven't played with Cascade. Because if you read like the spoiler thread of this card on the Arena subreddit, a lot of people are like, boy, this looks unplayable, it looks horrible. When I read this, I think of like Bit Blast and other like random 5-mana Cascade spells that were so good back in their time. Isn't this just like 5-mana Planeswalker, you Cascade, you gain 2 life because you are casting a spell from exile, and then you have a Planeswalker left over on the battlefield that can plus to make 3/2s? Like, isn't this actually a really good Planeswalker or no? Am I like totally just like way too scared of Cascade and Discover and overrating it? Because I feel like this card's like super good.
I think this card is hot garbage.
Wow, no respect for the Discover.
This card is actually hot garbage, but we're gonna find out. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but like as of right now, it's in red and white, right? Like it's in red and white, which we have to see if there is a color pairing. If Boros takes off or some kind of like Boros X kind of deck, I'm curious, or maybe like even 4-color control, right? Like if they decide to bring it in, I don't know. Is this good enough to play in it? Like what are you hitting? Like wedding announcement, maybe, or like some random you draw a card. I don't know. It's like -4 or -3 draw a card. If at its
Deal 2
worst,
damage.
right?
Oh, no, you don't even deal the
drain for
damage.
2.
You don't even cast if you
Oh,
draw.
if you draw,
right?
yeah. If you draw,
Yeah.
you don't get it, yeah.
But
I
if
mean,
you
what
cast it, it's
what
like,
about
it's
the-
random.
What about
It's
the
for
Pia
5 mana.
decks? You got the static ability lines up really well with the Pia, like Reckless Impulse, do all the impulse draw. Like, it is 5 mana, which is like
Yeah.
high end for that deck, but like the static seems very strong there, right?
In a Pia deck, sure, if you get to 5 mana, yeah.
Also,
And, like, if you-
adventures. Adventures are cast from exile. Like, I feel like the static ability is being slept on. I feel like in an adventure / reckless impulse standard, the static's actually like, I think, good.
But that's exactly the shell. I mean, don't get me wrong. That lines up more with what Magic wants to do, which makes Planeswalkers less universal, I guess, probably, and then makes it like more, hey, specific archetype, right? But this is, I feel like in standard, a little too not good for 5 mana.
What do you think, Richard? Cascade.
So this card is hot trash or insanely broken. like this is like a dredge card or something, right? Like either there is a shell that breaks it. I don't know. Like we have leyline binding, right? Like can you maneuver your deck in a way such that Discover 4 is not random? And if you can, then this card could be very strong. But if you're just actually like taking a random Boros pile and throwing it in, then this card is terrible. So I don't know. Is there some combination of evoke elementals and leyline bindings that we can play? Can we cascade into some rhinos or something? Like, are there 0 mana spells in standard that have some insane restriction that do something incredible you can game your deck into casting?
Can't hit leyline.
What about the...
No, that's the whole point, right? You have the reason this sucks is you have to play a curve, right? And then if you have a curve, you can discover into a 1 mana spell, and even if you just draw, like that's terrible use of 5 mana. So you want to stack your deck so that you have 1 mana interaction, but it doesn't trip up the Discover. Basically look at all the Cascade Modern decks, right? Can we do that in standard?
What about just playing it the way Garfield intended, randomly?
No,
like,
but that's terrible.
Think of Bloodbraid Elf. Think of Bloodbraid Elf in Jund, where you like spin the Bloodbraid, hopefully get a Liliana. Sometimes it's a Lightning Bolt, sometimes it's a Thoughtseize, but you deal with it because like it's free value. Can we not play the fair Quintorius Kand? Just like, obviously you'd want to think about your curve a little bit, but do we really need to be like rhinoing or living ending to make this worth it? You can't just play it like, hey, I'm going to spin into something and hopefully it's good.
I mean, the average cards, like power level in Modern, was high enough so that a Bloodbraid could work. And if you're going back to Standard, it's 4 mana, right? And it's a 3/2 with haste, which is much better than this -3. Discover 4. It isn't okay. That is dope. That is dope. Like that is very cool. But 5 mana -3, put it at 1 loyalty, and like which by the way gets like endless festivity from one of the Innistrad Tokyo Drift sets. By the way, is it kind of feels bad, man.
The ultimate also
sticking by
sucks.
it.
I'm not even sure this ultimate is useful. And then the plus
I don't
is kind
even
of
look at
mediocre.
ultimates.
I mean, the plus isn't that 3/2.
But that's the insurance, right? Like if you somehow made it, your ultimate wins the game. But I'm like, this ultimate is kind of suspect. Like you gotta be playing a certain kind of deck for this to work.
We'll see. I think it's going to be good. I think people are sleeping on it, but well, maybe I'm overrating it because I'm so scared of Cascade.
It's not Cascade though, Seth. It's Discover. It's fixed.
It's better Cascade.
It's fixed.
Also, Cascade cards aren't attached to a 5 mana like thing, right? They're pretty like mana efficient. Unless it's like they're cheating it in somehow.
We're playing Bloodbraid Elf in Modern now just for the Cascade, so I'm not sure.
Bloodbraid Elf is good.
But Seth, this triggers up the Beanstalk. Does that change your opinion?
Wait, it does, doesn't it?
You trigger up the Beanstalk, you discover into another. Oh, what if you live the dream in Modern? Okay, you play this, draw a card up the Beanstalk, get a Bloodbraid Elf into Charlotte's Agent into up the Beanstalk.
Into up the Beanstalk. I don't think
And
this
then
card's
all
gonna
the
make it
while,
in Modern.
you've just dealt your opponent like 8,000 damage, right? Oh no, wait, did all this resolve yet?
No.
No.
Wait, no, the Planeswalker will be on the
The
battlefield.
Planeswalker, yeah.
Oh yes. Then you would have dealt 6 damage.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh, Richard's coming around. Richard's coming around.
And I can already play Boros in my Up the Beanstalk. This was kind of a meme card that we got to make work.
Oh.
All right.
What?
Bedrock Tortoise. 3 and a green, 4 mana value, a 0/6. As long as it's your turn, creatures you control have hexproof. Each creature you control a toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power.
I put this on the list for 2 reasons. One is this card good? Like, this is 4 mana 6/6 annoys your opponent's instant speed stuff, right? Like, that's pretty far above the curve. I was looking at like 4 mana 6/6s, and they usually have some big drawback. This doesn't have a drawback. Second, why do they have to word things so there's no drawback? This card makes me very salty. Like, it's like, have your cake and eat it too. Where's the build around? Like in the past with Dorn or something, it's like, oh, I got to build my deck so I play high toughness, low power creatures. That'll be cool. This is like, whatever. Like, just throw it in any deck and it'll be fine. Like, because if it's beneficial, its ability will work. If it's not beneficial, it doesn't work. So this card makes me a little salty. But do you think this card's good? Is green back crim? Is this giving you nightmares in standard? Is this the one?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I kind of forgot green exists in standard. Like it's either all or nothing with that color, like in the game. Like they're either the most broken deck or
Golgari's like 10% of the metagame. It's happening. It's happening.
Sure. Golgari, where like a very green deck. Yeah, you got it. That's a black deck, and you know it. Like I don't know why this would be good. I don't. Like,
Shieldred hits for 5 now instead of 4.
Isn't there another 4
Yes.
mana 6/6 in the set with like actual build? So 4 mana 6/6 has been power crept for a long time now. Like you know the black ones usually have flying or something. Usually the drawback
Attached
is
to a
minimal. No one
demon.
cares. Yeah. So I don't know. 4 mana 6. You get hexproof, but only during your turn. That's a problem. In Commander, this doesn't trigger any power stuff, so this doesn't power up your Great Henge or anything like that.
It's true.
I don't know. I feel its ability is kind of like if you're building a toughness deck, you're gonna make sure. Like I guess like if you have like a 2/1 or something, it still hits for 2 damage instead of 1 damage. But like, is that really what we're optimizing for? Like, it's just a backup Doran that gives your creatures hexproof, so it's probably good enough. But I don't see the modal part of the combat damage mattering. I guess you could play a 6/1 in your toughness matters deck now and still deal 6 damage. But what card is that, and why are we doing this?
There's so in standard you got like Shigeki is a 1/3. You have the Mana Dork that's a 0/3 that eventually gets bigger after you exile a bunch of stuff from the graveyard.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a 3/3. Maybe there's some like mono green butts deck in standard with this. No.
Do we get some kind of evasion with this though?
I haven't gotten that far yet. I don't think there's anything. You just gotta
One
break through
human soldier versus massive tortoise. Chumped.
Yeah.
Ends
the downside
day
of the turtle
there.
life.
All right. The gods. Which god do we want to talk about?
Have we
Are
talked
any of
about
them actually good? We talked about the red one a while ago because it got spoiled early. So I know we talked about the red one forever ago.
All right.
I think
Let's go with the bat god. This is universes beyond DC preparation for us here. 3 black. So it's a 5 mana 4/4 flying lifelink. When it attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, create a 1/1 black creature token with flying. And then when it dies, when this thing dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. The backside is a land. You tap it for a black mana. Pay 3, tap, transform temple back into the other side. Activate only if a player has 1 or fewer cards in hand and only has a sorcery.
Yo, Bat God seems sick. I love Bat God. I don't think it's gonna I don't know how good it'll be in this standard, but I do think that Bat God is a cool card. I don't know. I like these gods. They seem oddly balanced. And you know what's funny? I mean, Scarab God and that whole cycle of gods from Amonkhet was also slept on when it was in standard. Everybody thought they weren't going to be that good. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise. They also thought it was bad. There's a chance that maybe we're just missing it. And like, there's a lot more of the set to come out. But I don't know.
I think these cards are so bad for constructed. I think these are all like these are all like commander cards. I think they're all like designed to be cool commanders. I don't know if they're really intended to see play like in standard. The white one like triples tokens, which is cool, but I don't know. You got Mondrak in standard that doubles tokens for a lot less mana. The blue one I thought was like, what do you think of the blue one, Krim? Because I know you're kind of the control player. Could you imagine actually playing it in a standard deck? My first thought was like you could build a cool commander deck around it, but I was like, 4-mana 4/3, like I'm not really hyped about the stats. It's real slow to flip back around if it dies because you got to wait 3 turns because of the time counters. Is it more of like you're hyped about it for commander, or do you think it could actually show up in standard?
I think this card is a standard card. I mean, a commander card. The blue god, and then the white god is definitely a commander card, but
like a token,
yeah. But I think the black and red one, those have legs to stand on in standard. I think those are very good. Of course, the problem here is that Bat God comes down at 5 mana, doesn't exactly do anything right away. So that's the biggest problem. You do have to have some pieces in place already. If you're able to like have a Lily on board already or something like that that's upticking, then sure, this will just pull you so far ahead.
But its ability only triggers when your opponent discards a land, right? I guess that's still like, so there's some value there because your opponent probably wants to discard a land because a lot of times that's the least valuable card in their hand. So this kind of is like punishing your opponent if they're like, oh, just get rid of the extra land. So it does something, but at the same time, like it doesn't always trigger. I've heard some people compare it to like Waste Not, and it seems like a very restricted Waste Not because it only really triggers on lands specifically being discarded.
Well, but then there's also just I think there's something about how sticky this could be and potentially a ramp spell as well, right? So just the resilience of it is kind of nice.
What do you think, Richard?
It's a good control finisher stabilizing kind of deal, right? Like you slap it down, it has lifelink, you can stabilize. If they kill it, if they empty their hand trying to kill you, you can flip this back for more lifelinking goodness. So it's like slow, dirly, grindy card. Fine. I like the 4-mana ones for commander better though. It's like really scuffed solemn. You put it down. If they kill it, great, you got a land, right? Yeah. You ramped. If they don't kill it, then you got rebound on your spells, right? So like actually, it's like kind of decent for commander, I think. Except for the white one is like the Winmore Super Dream, right? It's like 6 mana to triple your tokens. You gotta untap with it. But if you can untap with it, like boom, right?
You're having some fun.
Wait, what's the tap trigger again? To activate only 3 or more creatures. If you attack, okay. So to get it back, you gotta attack with 3 or more creatures. Yeah,
I feel like the white one can do cool things.
But the black one, I think, is possibly standard playable.
The red one, I think, is also good in standard.
I've been burnt by Urobras too many times. These mythic red 4-drops. I'm done. I'm done with mythic red 4-drops in my burn deck. I've learned. It took me years, but I'm done. They are super cool designs, though. Why is the blue one not a snake god? It's so weird to me. It's clearly a snake, and if you look at the showcase, it's like very, very like clearly a snake. Why didn't it get the snake type when the bat one got the bat? I don't understand why we have one bat god and the rest are just generic.
None of them got types except for the bat god because they're foreshadowing Batman. Universes Beyond.
Obviously, Universes Beyond. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, the other colors don't have any type when they.
Yeah, it's weird to have just one of them has a type. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see.
We needed
cool
a bat commander, so it got a bat god type.
That might be.
All right. The Myco Tyrant. Golgari. 1 black green. Star power toughness. It's a legendary elder fungus. Trample. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control that are fungi and or saplings. At the beginning of your end step, create X 1/1 black fungus creature tokens. with this creature can't block, where X is the number of times you descended this turn. And descended counts. You descend each time a permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere. So only permanent cards. If they hit the graveyard, then you descend.
Is this good? I mean, this seems like a fun commander card.
How do
But,
you
like-
descend enough? Or do we have fungi
So-
sapling makers to actually get this thing going?
So I think if this works, so there's a lot of descended and descend cards in the set. So there's a big incentive to have permanents going into your graveyard if you're playing those mechanics. I would imagine you like play this in a deck that's pretty much all permanents, and then like Cruel Somnophage or Urborg Lurgoyf to mill 4 cards, go to your end step, make 4 tokens. Like it seems like, or a Satyr Wayfinder. You Satyr Wayfinder, you mill the cards, you make a bunch of tokens. It is 3 mana. Maybe that's like too slow, but it seems like in a self-mill deck, this can easily be making like many tokens a turn, right? Like a lot of bodies on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Well, it has to be permanence, right? So
Right.
if you mill spells, or not spells, but instants or sorceries, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yep.
So your
But
mill
that's-
spells have to be permanents for this to work, kind of. You
But
can
that's kinda
also
like-
aristocrats this up. Like the fungus that you kill count towards descended, right? So if you have like 10 fungus and you sack them all, end step you make 10 back.
Yep.
So a free sack outlet could help.
Actually, I'm not sure if that works because it says a permanent card. And I don't know if
a
tokens are
token not a
card by the
card?
rules. I think that by the rules, tokens aren't cards, even though it's a permanent. We'd have to ask Nia to confirm that works, because I heard someone say that it actually doesn't work. What do you think of the?
I told you, I don't know how the set works.
What do you think of this?
Evaluate this.
What do you think of this mechanic? Like, is this mechanic actually good? We also have descend. So this was what? Descend. And then we have, or no, this was descended. And then we also have descend, which is like, I don't know, what's the easiest example of descend? There's the new Demir God. The new Demir God, the ancient one. 2 mana, 8/8. It has descend 8. Can't attack or block unless you have 8 permanent cards in your graveyard. Then you can pay 4 mana with Demir colors in there, draw and discard, and then mill equal to the card's mana value. Are cards like this good? Like, so we've seen Delirium work, right? Delirium cares about having 4 different card types in your graveyard, but it also counts spells. Descend doesn't care what the types are in general. It just wants it to be permanence. Is this a, like, constructed playable mechanic? Is this, like, gonna be pushed because you can easily play a bunch of permanents and self-mill and turn this on? Or is this gonna be horrible because a single Soul Guide Lantern or a Leyline of the Void or Rest in Peace just, like, absolutely ruins your day? Like, where does this fall, Krim, do you think, for 60 card formats? The mechanic in general.
I like the mechanic, as in I don't like the naming of it, right? Because they're
Well,
too
no, like
close.
playing with it. Yeah.
Yeah, playing with it, I like it. It seems that's why I think it's a lot of. It seems really powerful, right? But like, also everything in this set is like fight rigging friendly. Like it's still a lot of power, and depending on how you build this, right? Like that exact Urborg Lurgoyf deck, right? This kind of has a home there as well. And then you also have Faithless. What is it? Not Faithless Looting. Likeness Looter. There's like ways for you to like interact with your own graveyard again. From like those who may have forgotten that Wilds of Eldraine just came out a couple months ago. Yeah, like Likeness Looter is another thing. So it seems like there's a lot of cool ways to get permanents into your graveyard. I like this mechanic. I think it's going to be powerful.
And one
I
of the
think
things they did is add a lot of permanents that work like spells in this set to try to like up the permanent count, like discard that's or removal, things like that are attached to permanents. But what do you think about this mechanic, Richard? Sorry.
I was gonna say I really like the synergy with Eldraine. Adventures are permanents, but they're spells.
Yep.
So there are these like cute ways to get this to work. But I don't know. This is just like more stuff you need to count. Like same with so upon thinking about Descended, I'm pretty sure it doesn't work with tokens because there's no way to count them. Like you'd have to remember it, right? Like the way you would normally count this is you go to your graveyard and count the number of things that you find in there from this turn. But it's just like more stuff you need to count. Like Tarmogoyf check, but for everything, right? Like Delirium had this problem. Delirium was playable. Like the mechanic was not strong enough.
Delirium was a whole deck.
Yeah, people didn't feel the need to stuff main deck graveyard hate. But so it was somewhat effective, right? But Descend must be super powerful, right? Because once the graveyard hate comes, your deck does nothing. So
Yeah.
if there's no graveyard hate, you should be winning. That's kind of the graveyard dredge strategy. I don't know if it looks powerful enough to do that though. So we'll see. I don't know. But
I mean,
it is weird that it's permanence. Delirium was any type of cards, right? So now it's just another thing you need to remember.
Well, we have to answer the age-old question: did Dredge get a new toy?
No. But a lot of people have asked me about this, and my thinking on Dredge is that Dredge doesn't just want big creatures. I think the closest thing that there is, if there's a creature that makes it in Dredge, I think it's Souls of the Lost, I think is the name of it. Because Dredge, just being big isn't enough. I think you either need to have the Dredge mechanic or fill the graveyard. Souls of the Lost is kind of interesting. It's a 2-mana star+1. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. Toughness, that +1. So it's going to get really big. And its additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or sack a permanent. This one I think is actually intriguing to me in Dredge, because not only is it big, it's also turned to discard my Dredge card. Maybe that's still not enough, but the ones that don't actively fill the graveyard, I don't think are going to make it in Modern Dredge. Maybe we can do some like Standard Dredge or something, or like Historic Dredge, but I don't think they make it in Modern Dredge.
Wouldn't you just play Thrill of Possibility or something if like this is what you cared about, because that comes with the card draw as well?
So Dredge has Cathartic Reunion and Thrill of Discovery are the two big ones they play right now. That's kind of the question. Like, is there any value?
There's so many more of those, though, right? Like,
you
we're in the
play
modern
more of
card
those.
pool. You can play more of them.
What about the Brotherhood's End? Which one is that? The one where it's like it's the same effect, but on an enchantment, but gives haste.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one you could also play. What do you think, Richard? Is there any argument to just being like, hey, this is a 2-mana 10/10 in my deck or whatever? Like, does Dredge care? That still gets solituded, so who cares?
Yeah, I don't think I think Dredge cares about ways of fighting through graveyard hate rather than trying to get bigger. So I don't think it cares about this, and you would just play Thrill of Possibility 2 or whatever, 3. There's like so many versions of that card. Like if you just needed a discard outlet, like there's so many ways of doing it that I don't think you want. And this also has no evasion, right? Like it can be as big as it wants.
What about Standard? What about Standard, Grim? We got this. We have Urborg Lurgoyf. We have Cruel Somnophage. We got Souls of the Lost we were just talking about. We got the new Demir God. There's this huge... You could play like 20 Urborg Lurgoyf. So these 2 mana, fill your graveyard. I'm going to be a 10/10 creatures. Is it finally going to work? Is this the set that finally makes Urborg Lurgoyf into a Standard card? If this set doesn't do it, I'm giving up. Like, this is it. Like, this is your last chance, Urborg Lurgoyf. If all these cards are not enough to make you a playable card, then I guess you're just not going to work in 2023.
You're also forgetting about the Gurk, the Slogurk.
Slogurk, yes.
There's a lot that you could do with graveyard stuff, right? But my question is, like, to this whole archetype and everything in Standard is, you are praying that Sunfall does not get casted. You are praying Sunfall and Farewell. You like, if one of those cards are casted, goodbye. Like, thank you for playing this game.
I hate those cards.
Like, and those aren't like sideboard cards, right? Like those are like in the main deck. So it's a little scary. I think that it's not that like these cards don't boost the power of Goyf. It's that literally just the best answers in this format are all exile.
Yeah.
Everything is exile. Wandering Emperor exiles. Everything exiles.
And Soul Guide Lantern exists. And Soul Guide Lantern is like pretty main deckable because it cycles like, and it's colorless. If we ever got to a point where the Urborg Lurgoyf deck was dominating, it would be pretty easy to jam 4 of them in your main deck and like not lose a whole lot, because worst case they cycle for 2 mana. So I feel like there's some natural checks on the archetype's power in case it gets too out of control.
Everyone's main deck and graveyard hate already. Like this
but
is
it's
the
passive.
problem.
It's passive hate, right? Like
Graveyard Trespasser and yeah.
Like
But
Lord
like you have to
Skitter.
do that, right? Because there's so many powerful graveyard things going on that people are playing this graveyard hate main deck. So you come along with your descended deck or whatever, right? Like it's kind of scuffed, right? It's like playing Dredge into a meta where everyone's main decking ley lines already because some other graveyard, like I don't know, Hogak or something is happening, right? Like so, it's weird that they chose this mechanic, given that we know how exile heavy standard is and how we have so much powerful graveyard recursion already that people are ready for it. So yeah. Vrass's Tunnel Grinder. It's a 3-mana red legendary artifact. When it enters a battlefield, discard any number of cards and draw that many cards +1. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a boar counter on Vrass's Tunnel Grinder. Then if there are 3 or more boar counters on it, remove those counters and transform it. Is this land hate? Tap, add red. Whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by Teklican, discover X, where X is that spell's mana value. Okay. we were digging real deep, and then we just discovered. That's the flavor.
But
of
we
the card.
discovered it. Yeah, we struck oil or whatever. Yeah, like, is this card really good for? So I like it for standard, but this seems like a card that you would jam in any red deck in Commander. So when I first saw this, it's basically Valakut Awakening, one of the MDFCs I play in every deck in its colors, except it has the upside that you actually fill your graveyard rather than putting the cards on the bottom. So it's like the front half is an upgraded Valakut Awakening. The downside is you can't just play it as a land. The land kind of has suspend of this staying on the battlefield for 3 turns. But then if you get the land, it cascades every turn. Like, it discovers every turn. It's kind of ridiculous. It's way stronger than like an MDFC land because it actually has an ability. How strong is it? Is this like a red staple in Commander?
Okay. Yeah, like it's a very powerful card in Commander, but hear me out.
Uh-huh.
Urabrask. Or drop Urabrask.
Wait, what does Urabrask do?
Nothing, because I realized that it Discover X goes into only permanents. No, it goes into a spell.
Yeah.
It goes into a spell.
Yep.
So, dude, hold on. So then 4-mana Urabrask, you slowly build a deck that is going to storm people out. Come on.
That could be sweet.
Right? Because I know you said you were burnt by Urabrask.
I have been burnt by Urabrask.
Now your opponents can be burnt by Urabrask as well. Because you're going to cascade into a million burn spells in Standard. There's already a red Urabrask, like kind of like burn-esque like storm deck that people try to play. Could this go in
like
it?
me? Then they get lose every time. But yeah, it could definitely. Yeah. I mean, isn't this card just fine? Like, it lines up very poorly with Shieldred. That is one concern. The mass looting effect, not obviously ideal in a Shieldred format. But other than that, like, I like this card a lot, and I think it's actually playable. What do you think, Richard? Am I overrating this one?
Card's doo-doo. What are we talking about? Standard or Commander? What are we talking about here?
MDFC.
Standard
How is it
is terrible.
It costs 3 mana.
But then it turns into a land
your love
eventually.
of weird mana rot. But like, first of all, you're not snapping off Valakut Awakening on turn 3, okay? You're like sandbagging that card until you have like 8 lands in hand somehow, and then you snap it off. And then you gotta wait 3 turns. So the turn you play, you had to have cracked a fetch land or something.
Yep.
And then you wait 2 additional turns. And then it gets the flip. And then all you do is just discover something like Primal Amulet exists. Like all these like cards that like double your spells exist. Like this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Is Wizards paying you to shield this card set? I'm
to play all the bad artifacts.
Wait, this doesn't seem like a card I'd like. You get to loot and fill your graveyard, and then it flips into a land that cascades or discovers, like...
In 3 turns.
I remember...
It's only going to get shattered in the meantime, and then it just becomes a land.
Do you remember last Ixalan? Weren't these cards really good? Remember, like, Search for Azcanta was a staple, Treasure
Yes.
Map was a staple, Azur's Gateway saw fringe play. Like, several of these, like, flip into a land effects actually ended up being pretty good in Standard. So maybe I'm, like, overrating this because I remember those being good. So I'm not, like, intimidated by, oh, you got to play this thing and wait a couple of turns because they work last time around. And then I just think Cascade is like super strong. So seeing a land
we
that
are
has
slow
Discover
and
on it is very
grindy.
exciting.
So you can think of this as Fable of the Mirror Breaker, where you played it and your goblin instantly died. Okay, so then their second upkeep, you get to loot. So here you go, right? You get to chuck some cards, refill your hand, and then you got to wait another eternity for it to flip into the thing that can clone your stuff. This will give you a Discover. That was super
Also-
playable. That didn't feel too slow. So, but maybe the Goblin token had everything to do with it. If it didn't come with a Goblin token, would we be talking about Fable?
Probably not. Yeah, maybe it doesn't do enough up front. Although, like, we have Descend as a mechanic. This fills your graveyard. It's like doing all those kind of things. So there's like a lot of little synergies. The backside, I think, is... I mean, anytime you get an extra land on the battlefield, it's good. But this is actually a good land. Plus, we do have Proliferate in Standard. So you could always, like, speed up the flipping a little bit to, like, Proliferate once to get it a turn earlier.
You know how everyone's so grindy? Like, maybe this is fine. This is like...
Yeah.
It's like a let's say it's a 3 mana, do literal nothing, but in 5 turns, you come online and you start winning the game. That may actually be playable in Standard. Like, if we're so slow and grindy, like, maybe you can just take turn 3 off and do something not effective. And then it's like the One Ring, right? You take turn 4 off, do nothing. Up the beanstalk, take turn 2 off, do nothing, and then just win with some incredible late game. Maybe this is actually better. Maybe Seth is right. Maybe you could actually pull this off in Standard.
I'm excited to try it.
You can try to pull it off, yes, but is it good? Right? Like, is it
The
good?
problem is someone can just like shatter this artifact in the meantime, right? And then like you just wasted all your time doing nothing.
Yeah, but then you descended me. Did you think of that? That's a permanent going in the graveyard opponent.
Didn't play around it.
Okay, Molten Collapse. Black, red. So 2 mana values. A sorcery. Choose one. If you descended this turn, you may choose both instead. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value $1 or less. Is John back on the
$1
menu,
less.
boys?
I mean, this is
Dreadbore Powercraft, right?
strictly better Dreadbore. Yeah, like literally, if you're playing Dreadbore, move over, you play this instead. So Pioneer staple. Dreadbore coming to Arena for the first time, Krim. That's one of the Pioneer cards that has not made it to Arena yet. So now we don't even need Dreadbore because we got this because it's just better. Plus, is this enough of an upgrade to make it in Modern? That's where the question for me is. I heard like Mengucci talking about how Dreadbore is one of his scam cards. It's like right on the edge where he like it goes in and out and he's tried it. Is this enough of an upside to actually have a modern playable Dreadbore, that second mode when you crack a fetch land?
I
It
think it's
kills
pretty good.
amulets. It
Yep.
kills.
Hardened Scales, any
Hardened
Ozolith, any of
Scales.
that stuff. Random
It kills
hate cards,
hammers.
kills
It
hammers.
Sigarda's Aid.
Engineered Explosives, Chalice. Gets rid of both of those.
Is Judd back on the menu?
John might be back.
What if I just
And
put
it,
this in scam and play a real deck?
it also
Yeah,
pitches
like-
to Grief and Fury, which is an upside. It does
But it's
pitch to
basically
two
fatal
elementals.
push, right? You just need a chuck a fetch land, right?
Yeah.
And then you can do this on turn 2. This is good. This has to be playable in Modern. Like,
I think it is.
there are red-black decks. The most
Like
popular deck in the
Scam.
format is a red-black deck. So I don't think this helps Jund in any way, but Scam should definitely be playing this, no? Or at least sideboard.
I think
I
it's
mean-
enough of an upside to make it worth it. What do you think, Grim?
Elementals help you descend, right? 'Cause
That's
this one,
also
it's permanent.
That's true.
Right, like-
that's true.
So obviously, though, it comes in, it sacks itself, it does its thing, then you get to descend and pick off more stuff. Like, I don't know, this feels pretty good.
How big of a deal do you think it is, Krim, for Arena? Because we've never had Dreadbore. That's one of those cards where I'm always like, why is this missing? Why? That's such an easy card to make. Why haven't you added that to Arena yet? Does this shake anything up in Explorer, do you think? Does it, like, how big of a deal is a Dreadbore?
Rakdos midrange, right?
Yep.
which is played already. I think this will go all the way back to like historic, right? Like because treasures do not count.
I don't
No.
believe tokens can descend. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm
Okay,
pretty
yeah.
sure they don't.
At least I think maybe then like at least yeah. You know what? I could see like Jund Cat and stuff like that in all these decks. Like yeah, this has play all the way back to historic.
I think so. It snipes Witch's Oven. It snipes
Yeah.
Pithing Needle that's shutting down like your One Ring or a Planeswalker or like whatever. I think there's a lot of upside. I think worst case it's maybe it's like it is in Pioneer, where a lot of times in Pioneer Rakdos you see like a Dreadbore in the main and another one in the side. It might be something like that. Are we jamming 4 of these in the main in Historic? Probably not, but I think some number of these will definitely show up in Rakdos decks in those formats.
This card is so efficient on mana, I think, and like if you ever get to do both, that's nuts.
Yeah.
It's a scam. I'm like, it can kill Leyline Binding, right? Because you always cast it for one
Yeah,
mana.
that counts. That's how that works.
Yeah. All right, those are, I think, all the previews we have time to hit up. Check them all out, mtgpreviews.com. There are a ton of cards we haven't talked about. There are Jurassic Park cards as well. There's
So
the
many.
Commander cards we haven't gotten to. There's the 8,000 variants of each card. You can check out Quintorius in every frame imaginable. So yeah, check out mtgpreviews.com.
And I think that brings us to the end of episode 457 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. Oh yeah, Richard, no fish mail this week, but in case we get to it next week, how do people send in fish mail?
All right, hit us up on Twitter at MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
So that brings us to the end of today's cast. Richard Grimm, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we will be back next week to talk about the rest of Ixalan and whatever else goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have a lovely week, everyone. And this is a crew signing out.